Hello, good morning. I think that we can start to introduce to you Dr. Adel. We are very glad to have him here in the Bootcamp 2022. And well, I am Andrea Ugalde. I'm the moderator today for this session. And I'm very glad to present to you Dr. Adel. He is a PhD holder in applied linguistics and concentrating in vocabulary acquisition. He has also an MA in applied linguistics from La Trobe University from Australia, and his work has focused on areas such as second language acquisition studies, TESOL, ESL, cultures, and intercultural communication studies. Translator also is covered, and also language and identity and research methods in applied linguistics. He has a career over in the past 14 years of his career. He has achieved many things such as teaching Arabic for non-native speakers in the US. And he has also worked, thought, and even built his own ESL program. Now this session, he is going to present the vocabulary 5 steps to help students learn more vocabulary that aims to help the language learners integrate the best strategies in acquiring new words. We're very glad to have you today, Dr. Adel. If you want to start your presentation now.
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. Good morning. And I'm really glad to join all of you today in this session talking about vocabulary. It's one of my passion since I was, starting my career in teaching at the university level. So basically today we're gonna share a couple of things related to, vocabulary acquisition, as we can say, but also we will focus on those strategies that I think it will help a lot of learners boost their vocabulary size, vocabulary knowledge, and overall will help them, get a very good language knowledge, basically. So I'm gonna start sharing my disk over here because in this presentation, I'm gonna present a couple of things that I would like to share with all of you. So let's start with the first slide. All right, can you all see that on the screen right now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, good. So basically, this is one of the editions that I already published. It was actually, at the beginning, it was a minor article that I was trying to look at this as a research interest. So first of all, I looked at different criteria to see how, second language learners strategize for their vocabulary learning. And then I came up with these 5 strategies that will actually boost their vocabulary learning. So basically, this session today will help both student and teacher as well. As you can see here, I put some credential accounts for myself over here. So you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or, get in touch with me. Also, I have, a WordPress blog page that you can follow. Later on, I'm going to share all of this. But first of all, let's all talk about this, the 3K. I want you to, pause for a couple of minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Ask yourself, what I know in terms of vocabulary learning strategies and vocabulary acquisition and all of that really concerns with your language learning. Also, you may want to ask what I want to know from this session. So I want to hear from all of you in terms of those 3K. And the last question is what I learned. So basically, you're going to share your previous knowledge about this topic. Perhaps you have also done some work on this kind of topic. So maybe we'll see how you are going to answer those questions. That's actually just the beginning, and I want you to brainstorm some of those related questions. So any thought from anyone? Because this is a workshop, so I want to have the discussion like, you know, between us, like freely. If you want to interrupt, talk, or ask, you're free to do so. So is there any kind of, you know, response regarding this, for example, the first two questions? Because the last question will be, you know, will be answered this question later on. So basically, I want you to focus on the goal of, you know, working on the first two questions now, and later on, once we are done with this workshop, you can add some details to what I learned from this session, for example. So any participants would like to share any answer for the first two questions?
Okay, hello, I'm
Yes.
Alan, and what I know, I know vocabulary about movies or some things that we have around here in Mexico. What I want to know, I don't know, maybe some vocabulary higher, okay? Higher vocabulary or something.
You mean higher, like or more advanced?
More advanced or something like that, or I don't know. Maybe I didn't put that in my head before this course, but I'm pleased to be here and hear you and see you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so about the first one, the first question, maybe you said I know some words from movie or music, whatever word or vocabulary you know. But here we're trying to look at the strategies that help you learn vocabulary. So I just want to make this clear.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe Alan, you can answer this question in a other way.
Better.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I know vocabulary. Yeah. Maybe one strategy is watching movies. Yeah.
Okay.
Another one is listen to music, and some of them are in the books and see images and I don't know, match images with words and search it in internet or something. Okay,
that's
maybe
good.
That's it.
Yeah, we call this in vocabulary learning strategies, you know, kind of, you know, working with word with the similarities, like you said, word with the images. You try to match those. We're gonna see those specific strategies related to, you know, working with images and word itself to make a connection. So we're gonna do that later on. We will see that. Okay, is there any other participant who would like to share the answer for the first two questions?
Hi, doctor.
Yes, hi.
Hello, my name is Max. I teach in a high school, Preparatoria 2, and also in a private college. with elementary students, specifically, where I can identify this KWL chart as a very amazing tool for the students. I work with Oxford, and previous to this KWL chart, specifically with 4th grade students, we make like a cover page, like an introduction for the unit, where we can analyze prior knowledge, vocabulary specifically, with illustrations. After we finish with this warm-up activity, the cover page, this is a very interesting activity for students, specifically the 3rd question. Teacher, can we complete already the 3rd question? We need to wait. We need to make some speculations about the unit. And it is a very good activity for not only elementary students, but also as junior high students, as well as in Preparatoria 2. I also apply this activity, and it is a very good activity where students can enhance their knowledge at the beginning of the unit, at the beginning of the topic, in this case, vocabulary.
That's really interesting. You know, Mr. Armando?
Armando
Yes.
Maximiliano.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I'm very glad to hear this because, you know, you have to bring students to their previous knowledge first. When it comes to something they would like to learn for the first time, maybe you would like to brainstorm their idea and bring them to this knowledge and let them experience this kind of new experience as they know it. And then we move on from that point to the next stage. So here the KWL chart will actually identify and help us at least put some answers to those questions. And then we will see the difference later on. Once we are done with this session, I'm sure you will have more answers to those questions. Basically like what I learned from this session. So I'm really glad to hear this, that you use this chart to help, enhance their, learning, outcomes at the beginning and then bring them to the session that you are trying to do. All right. Is there any other participant? Please feel free to answer these questions either now or later on. But I want you to focus on this because it's gonna look different once we are done with this workshop. All right, now we're gonna move to the second slide, which is the content. This is basically my content for this workshop. And it's actually a little bit, kind of a sequence process that actually I followed. But this sequence process actually formed according to some studies. And basically, as I said before, I have, done some survey and I did the research about it. So maybe you want to think why we have all those numbers, why we start with number 1 and then number 5. Well, I think they actually goes in this process. Once you are looking at the new vocabulary, you have to follow those sequences, okay? But we will see later on how could you manage working with those different learning strategies, one after the other. So basically, the learning vocabulary, as I see, should start with synonym first. And by knowing synonym, you want to think about different words that has the same meaning, okay? So here, I guess we are looking at a global picture of that word. So for example, you're dealing with words that has, for example, like the word scent, okay? I'm gonna go in details with those, just I'm trying to give you an idea, okay? For example, you might have other words that's similar to this word exactly. So you're gonna match them. So the first job is to look for synonym. Now the second one, which is a little bit more deep understanding of the word itself, which is you try to match the meaning with the context. Because some words, they have a different context that you are trying to look at. It depends, but I want to focus on this a lot. Once you are learning about the vocabulary, try to match it with the context, the more specific context that you are trying to find. All right, that's number two. Number three is actually related to listening and pronunciation strategies. And in this kind of strategy, you need to practice a lot of listening and pronunciation practices. We will look at all those details together. I'm just trying to go over them quickly, and then we will look at each one of those in detail. Number four, a bookmark strategy, which is a kind of, a reflective to what you have done in that kind of vocabulary learning. So every time you try to learn about new vocabulary, you try to make that bookmark, make it available, ready next to you every time you learn about those new vocabulary. So I guess it's a kind of physical and also mental activity, isn't it? Number five, the last one. Actually, the last one is the time when you compose that vocabulary, when you take it out from your mind and use it as a writing form, which is remembering strategies for writing. Okay, so those are the 5 main strategies that actually I built to help second language learners boost their vocabulary learning or their vocabulary size. Are we good with this slide? Do you have any question? Do you get the idea? Because later on I'm gonna move to different details, so I just want to know if that is something clear to everyone.
Yeah, it is clear. Don't
okay
worry.
All right, sounds good. Now remember I told you that the sequence of those 5 strategies was actually established and built according to my first article that I published. And as you can see here, this arrow, which is the first one, is actually related to reliability score. Now, after I've done the research, I looked at the reliability score and then ordered those 5 strategies according to this reliability score number. So as you can see here, after those participants answered the survey, I found out that the synonym relation were the highest, among those 5 strategies. And then comes after that the meaning versus context, which is more deeper kind of learning strategies. So you can follow the number here. It gets very high for the first step and then a little bit lower until the number 5, which is remembering strategies for writing. In other words, those number actually mark the significance of those strategies for second language learners. So for example, when I asked those second language learners, what is the most strategies that you usually use? Most of them answered number 1 was synonym relation strategies that help them improve their vocabulary size. Did you get the idea?
Yeah, the synonyms are the most important of these ones.
Yeah, the highest kind of strategies used. Yeah. Yes. But later on, we will see something we call it VLS taxonomy, okay? That is the vocabulary learning strategies taxonomy based on decades, like more than 3 decades of research. So I'm gonna put that together, okay? So you're gonna see more kind of taxonomy for this vocabulary learning strategies. Okay, but this one is actually according what I have already researched about. Now, let's classify those strategies. Okay, we need to classify them so you know what kind of strategies you're trying to implement in your learning. So the first one here, it's a cognitive. Okay, it's a cognitive strategy. That means you try to train your brain. Okay, you train your brain to get this, for example, the relationship between those two words, they have the similar meaning. Okay, then we have something, in the second strategy is meaning versus context, or vice versa, we can say with context. It's actually a metacognitive and social strategies. So here we have to train our mind to use those meanings in, for example, speaking, writing, and other kind of practices. Also, remember the social strategies. You're trying to build this kind of connection with the world around you to use that, a new vocabulary. Okay, it's like you are trying to implement what you already learned. Okay, and that's actually we're looking at the social strategies. All right. Now, under the listening or the listening and pronunciation strategy, we're trying to train our social strategies. It's actually basically you try to get connected to the sounds around you and also help others understand what you're trying to say. Okay, that is a social strategy. Now, bookmark strategies is a kind of metacognitive strategy. Also, some people or some researchers, they call it a dictionary strategies. And I would like to highly, focus on this one. I want to highlight this because it's one of the basic strategies that will continue all the way through your vocabulary learning. All right. Number 5, remembering strategies for writing. Well, this is actually a memory strategy, okay? But also we can call it some kind of motor skills because you're trying to practice writing those vocabulary each time you learn something new, all right? So just to give you an idea again about this slide, it's actually my previous publication that I would like to put in front so we all know the connection between what we are trying to look at today. All right, as we all know, without grammar, very little can be conveyed. However, without vocabulary, nothing can be conveyed. So you can see the importance of vocabulary here when we are trying to deal with the language. So what do you think about this quote? Do you agree? Disagree?
Yeah, it is true. Totally.
Sometimes, I was thinking about this when people get very short, for example, limited vocabulary to express themselves or at least deal with, kind of communication with others. And then we may have some difficulties if you are not trying to convey the message because of that shortage of vocabulary you have. So here we are trying to look for words while we are trying to communicate with others. But also it applies to writing. Now, the introduction here, I've just make some very brief introduction about the topic, okay? Previous research shows that language learners need to understand, and this is something I would like to highlight, 90% coverage of the language coming from written text to be able to comprehend them well. That means you need to have at least a higher vocabulary size to get that text or know about that text. In other words, if you have difficulties understanding some text in English or in the language that you are trying to learn, the main cause or the main problem of if you have misunderstanding or, for example, less comprehension for that kind of text, you may need to go back and check what is my vocabulary size, okay? But this is not something we call mathematic, okay? It's not a mathematic, for example, equation. No, it's about the size of vocabulary that you already have to understand the new text, all right? Also, in vocabulary learning, you know, this actually branch of study has not gotten the primary attention from applied linguistics in early 1980s, okay? But nowadays, of course, there are so many publications that actually focused on vocabulary. And one of those actually common figures in vocabulary acquisition of vocabulary learning strategies, like Paul Nation. He's one of the highest, you know, rank philosopher in this kind of field. We also know other like Schmidt and other, you know, researchers who are focused on this kind of research. It was known as a neglected aspect. So this is something I would like to share with you as a neglected aspect of language learning, all right? As noted by the publication by Paul Mera. This is a, you know, British researcher who was actually criticizing the vocabulary learning at that time. Also, when we are dealing with vocabulary learning strategies, we need to know the classification of this study. It has two main facets. The first one from the cognitive or mental activities by L2 learners. So we're trying to look at the strategies that second language learners, they use in their brain, okay? And second, a social and interactional forms in which L2 learners practice his or her ability to study new words. So as you can see here, we have two types of two classification of vocabulary learning strategies, all right? Did you get this idea together? So this is something, you know, help us understand the big picture.
Yeah, like to see the map of everything.
Exactly. This is actually the two major classification of vocabulary learning strategies when we are dealing with the second language learners. All right. Remember I talked to you about the vocabulary learning taxonomy? Actually, I've listed the most common taxonomy according to the previous research. The first one comes from Rebecca Oxford. She started this in 1990, and she divided the vocabulary learning strategies into two different aspects, direct and indirect strategies. And as you can see here, the picture on the right side, that is her classification in the publication she actually published early, 1990. And actually it divided into two main categories. The first one, direct strategies, that is actually related to cognitive memory strategies and compensation strategies. For the indirect strategies, we're trying to look at the metacognitive strategies, affective strategies, and social strategies. And that's how Rebecca Oxford actually classified the study of vocabulary learning strategies. In 1997, Norbert Schmidt, he's a well-known researcher. He developed a new taxonomy, which is very close to Oxford's kind of taxonomy, but he actually listed 7 types of those taxonomy. But I'm referring to his article here, so you can go back and check that if you are interested in reading all those different details of taxonomy. Also, Go and Johnson, 1996, they designed 7 types of vocabulary learning strategies in their study. And they actually moved that in another study in 2001. Also, Paul Nation in 2001 classified vocabulary learning strategies into 3 types of strategies. Those are planning, sources, processes. So here we're trying to look at how second language learners start learning new vocabulary, okay? Also, Cohen, 2011, divided language strategies into goal, function, and skill. So he actually divided those into 3 types. And the last one here, actually very updated model from Oxford, Rebecca Oxford, in 2011, she actually made this taxonomy and she called it S2R. And this is actually a model of L2 learning. Basically, she improved this taxonomy made in 1990. All right. So in the method I used for the study I just published earlier, I actually asked some questions like those questions. I have used online survey. For example, that's actually the basic detail of how I use that data. There are 5 items, scale ranging from strongly agree to strongly disagree. And basically, this is how I, give my survey to the participant. The results, as you can see, most of the participants were students, college students, graduate and undergraduate. According to the 5 variables I was trying to look at, which is the 5 strategies that I actually shared with you earlier. Now, let's look at the first type, which I call it a process. Okay, now, what I think that second language learners should start with synonym. In this way, you can ask them to check synonym first for new words. Like, for example, if you come across a word, ask them to relate this word to other similar words. Also, maybe you want to try to use a semantic map for each word. And that's kind of, drawing or making those connection with other words, but we call it a semantic map. What we get also to do is to connect synonyms with antonyms. This is another way to help those learners, connect those synonyms together. Maybe you want to try to look at the opposite of that word. Also build up global knowledge of the new words, because now we are trying to look at the big picture of that word, all right? We're trying to get that outer picture of that word to be known. Also, we experience different contexts of new words. Of course, you know this word exactly, but when we look at the synonym, it might have a different context. So the different context will help us understand, okay, there are other words, they are similar in kind of, meaning, but they have a different context. The last process here, we connect unknown words to the known ones. What does that mean? It means when we know the synonym, we try to look for the other words. It might not be, for example, well known to us. But once we know the synonyms, we'll be connecting those together. Now, the learning outcomes, as you can see here, it will be very beneficial, okay? For example, what we get if we actually do this process. First of all, it will increase a vocabulary bank in the mind. So that means your vocabulary size will get bigger because you already connected those similar words. Also, you're gonna assist memorizing vocabulary faster. That's actually a kind of process, and practice that you do every time. Also, another outcomes we can benefit from this first step is actually more choices and confidence in speaking and writing. In other words, remember, if you're trying to write or maybe read some kind of new text, but you come across those synonyms, ask yourself, maybe you will have this answer right away. Like, for example, oh, I know that word. I know it's a similar or a synonym of that word. So here you will have more choices to be, kind of confident in that kind of speaking and writing new text. The last one here, of course, it will enhance word relation in the mind. We will have a good connection of those new words every time we come across the other synonyms. I hope you get the idea here, right? Is that clear?
Yeah, don't worry.
Okay, just want to check with all of you. I just want to make sure everybody, on track with this kind of process. So here we're done with the first, still have one more slide. I designed this chart to help you remember this strategy faster. For example, let's say that you come across this word right now, okay? And you don't know this word, dispatch, okay? Because we are trying to treat our mind to know the meaning of that word, which is actually the first process gets in your mind. However, if you're trying to look at the synonyms of that word, it will be easier for you to remember the meaning, okay? Like, for example, if I check the dictionary right now and look for the synonym only to that word, this will make it easier for me and for my mind to remember the meaning, okay? Like, for example, if I go to the dictionary and check the word send, well, I think I know the word send, okay? And I can make a connection so fast, okay? And then I can make a better picture with relating to the different synonyms. Did you see the idea here?
Yeah.
So the second box,
yeah,
the second box will give us more choices, more synonyms, more words that I know now. Is that clear? Well, I call this one word learning model.
Yeah, I didn't know this deeply, but now that I see, it's very interesting. Thank you, Dr. Adel.
Okay. Now, because, I grew up learning English as a foreign language, I know exactly what happened when it comes to a new word. So here, I'm asking you to link those synonyms together. Forget about the meaning, forget about the other details of that word. Now, let's look at the big picture first, okay? Now I have more words. I can know deliver, send, ship, dispatch. Those have a very big umbrella of the same meaning, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Totally good. Thanks.
Okay, now let's move to the second strategy, which is meaning with context. But this is very important because, most second language learners, they actually stick with the meaning first. Like, for example, they try to get the meaning of that word right away. But that is not a very good choice, like a good strategy. Why? Because we're trying to deal with different contexts here, not just one, but so many. Now, maybe you want to ask me, why do you need to care about this different context? Well, of course, because in English, there are some words, they have hundreds of contexts. So here I want you to remember this. Every time you try to look at the meaning, try to look at the context of that word. And here we're trying to look at 3 layers of that word. Okay, 3 layers. The first one is a global. Okay, in the global, you try to look at the meaning. Okay, and also check the big picture of that word. So you remember, we're trying to look at the synonym. That is the big picture. Then we try to look at the local or functional usage of that word. Okay, like for example, we try to look at the context exactly. All right, the context of that word. That is the second layer here. The third one, or we still actually also try to look at how to apply meaning in that context. So here, I know the context, so I know where to fit that word in that specific context. Okay. Now the third one, which is the center of that kind of new word, is actually the deep source of the word origin. Like, what is the origin of that word? In other words, we look at this slide here. Now, remember, I told you about the meaning with the context, but sometimes I use verses because I know some students, they actually try to disconnect because they practice it every time. They just try to get the meaning. Every time to learn the new word, they go and check the meaning, and that actually gets them to lose, for example, the appropriate, knowledge of that word. I'm saying this because they actually think that this is the only context, but it's not that way. In vocabulary studies, there is something called vocabulary knowledge, and there is a basic definition of that term. So I want you to remember this term, vocabulary knowledge. What does it mean? So according to Smith, actually, he said that form-meaning linkage is the most basic vocabulary knowledge possible. Now, what does that mean? It means that you have a link. You have to link between the meaning and the context. So when you do that, that means you already have a vocabulary knowledge of that word. So basically, we have 3 different components of vocabulary knowledge. The first one is the form, you remember that, meaning, and the third one is the context or the usage of that word. All right? This is another classification. Just I'm trying to help you understand how it works. When we ask to get the meaning with the context, we try to guess the meaning from context before knowing the word or the meaning itself. So here, I want to ask you, if you check the dictionary, try to go back to see the context of that word first, and then you try to get the meaning. Also, check the word's context in dictionary. That's another process will actually help us identify that particular context. Apply different context of a word in speaking and writing. Okay, what does that mean? It means that once you know that word, you'll be able to apply it yourself in that context. So you will have a better understanding on how to use it or apply it in that kind of, for example, in speaking or in writing. Excuse me, just want to have a sip. So here we try to understand how to using it in speaking and writing as well. The last one here, we check the meaning that fits the new word's context. Again, here, I'm trying to ask you which one or which meaning that fits the context that we are trying to look at. We are trying to match and get that in particular. All right. Are we good with the second with the second process? Do you have any questions so far?
Remember, you can also confirm by the chat, right in there. You don't have to.
Okay. Because actually I don't want to lose track of the slides, but writing on the chat could help also as well.
Alan just confirmed here in the chat, everything is good until now.
Okay, all right. All right, I'm just posing a question just to check on those participants, maybe if they want to pose a little bit for a question or so. Now we are at the third process, which is practice the sounds of the new words. This is actually one of the hard process that sometimes second language learners think about how to practice, pronunciation and other listening practice. Number one, try to listen, because most of the time, listening is the best practice of all. You can listen to people, media, record your voice. Yes, I'm saying record your voice because this will help you be more confident talking and also pronouncing those words to yourself. Also, practice pronunciation or pronouncing the syllable loudly. Like, for example, we have this word, conspicuous. Now here, the point here is that you are trying to pronounce each one of those syllables, but also we are trying to pronounce how do they form together and make that word sounds like conspicuous, okay? Also, when it gets very long syllable, maybe we will also look at the formation of that word, okay? Like some words, they actually end with ment or, other prefixes and suffixes of those words will help us pronounce them easily. I hope that is a very easy practice here for all of you. So I want you to practice this every time you come to a new word. Try to pronounce the syllable. Maybe you want to share with me. Does that help? Have you done this before? Anyone? Like, have you practiced pronouncing those new words using the syllable process?
Normally,
no.
Normally I pronounce it like this, but like all the sentence or for grammar, but not. I don't have done it with vocabulary, or I don't do the time to do it with the vocabulary. Now, that's why I'm interested right now.
You know why I am using this process? Because at early stages, Mr. Allen and everyone here, at early stages, when we actually come across those new words, I want you to ask yourself a question. Maybe, I haven't heard it from anyone else. Nobody told me this, or I'm just trying to practice it myself. I want to go back to the dictionary. This is my way, okay? I'm trying to share it with you. I try to pronounce those syllables and just try to practice it easily. Now, it doesn't mean you are really bad at pronouncing. No, it's just a practice for you to have this kind of knowledge about the different syllable of that word. I hope everybody gets the meaning here or get the point. Okay, so sometimes it's better practice just to get this, loudly saying it to yourself. Another words that we can practice here, something we call private speech. Now, what does it mean by private speech, everyone? Does anyone know about this?
Like to talk it only for you.
Exactly.
To say it only for you in a, I don't know, slowly way.
Yes, exactly, Mr. Allen. Like, for example, if you're driving to your work or to school, or whatever you're going, try to pronounce it to yourself. Sometimes, just a couple of times, it will help you practice it, more easily. And you are trying to practice and train your tongue and ears at the same time. So this is a very interesting way. Of course, you're not doing this every time, but just practice it to yourself. All right. So let's move to the second slide here. Now, how can I do this process? Practice the sound of the new words. First of all, I want you to engage in conversation with friends, teachers, service providers, and family members. So you can name it. A lot of context, a lot of settings that you can practice that with people around you, with the social media that you're trying to get connect with. Sometimes you want to engage with some discussion online, all right? So that way you will have more practice listening and also reading those people, or sorry, listening to those people pronounce it, as it is. Also, you want to enhance listening skills by summarizing what you have listened to. Of course, we're not just listening to podcasts. We're not listening to movie or something that might interest you, but try to figure out the theme. What is the theme of that listening segment? Okay. What is the culture behind it? Why did they talk about it? Do they talk about it in terms of economic side, maybe social side, or maybe a scientific way? Also, what type of language did they use in that kind of listening? It could be a very, high class kind of language, or it could be just a public, maybe language. Maybe you want to get the center of that talk. What is the center of that talk? Why they actually share this kind of discussion? Also remember, the more you listen, the more you develop confidence in speaking skills. And this actually, we call it in English, a receptive skills. Okay, so listening and speaking are those, listening and reading are receptive skills for practicing the language skills in language learning. Also, when we try to listen, we try to cultivate listening habit. We make it just a habit by listening to those podcasts, for example, and go beyond learning goals. Like, for example, you figure out maybe the writer's kind of, interesting area that he is interested in, or she is actually trying to get to the readers or the listeners. We're trying to look behind this with more goals. So here are some channels or media that you are trying to look at when it comes to listening practice. For example, we have maybe, it depends on what you're trying to look at, like TV, music, radio, listen to different people as well, podcast. Nowadays, we have TED Talks. As you know, I practice this a lot of time. Remember, we are trying to train our ears and also try to get more vocabulary. So here I would like to encourage everyone to go and check TED Talks. Sometimes they actually help us see how people actually be more with that language, like talk about it and discuss it with the others. Yeah, I see some people here, a participant, they say something about the listening practice. Some says they separate the words when reading it, when they are difficult for them. Well, yeah, that's actually, we're trying to look at the syllable here, not separate, exactly separate, but try to look at the syllable of that word. Also, Miss Yolanda says that I listen to the words and say them aloud and then use them in a sentence or a song. That is exactly the practice I was trying to show you here. We listen to the words and try to say them loudly to ourselves. Yes, that's a very good practice over here. All right. Now, let's look at number 4, which is actually a bookmark vocabulary search. What does it mean by bookmark here? We're trying to check every word we learn and use that bookmark. Why? Because we want to go back to that word again. All right. For example, I want you to look at how to set up a vocabulary notebook. So make it a habit. You know, we are dealing with the strategies, right? So here, I want you to make this available to you. All right. The vocabulary notebook. So every time you go back and check this vocabulary note and put that new word in that notebook. Also, one of the best things about this vocabulary notebook is that you will check new words daily and weekly. Okay, so here you will actually practice it every day or every week. So it depends on your plan to go with a higher vocabulary size. Also, you practice vocabulary repetition and retention practices. Of course, if you go back and check those words in your notebook, you'll be able to remember that word again more carefully. You will understand the vocabulary itself as it's at the meaning that we're trying to use. And here I want to share you a summary of a study by Paul Nation. And he actually said that in order to master a new vocabulary, you have to come across that word between 5 times to 16 times. Now, how can you do that? Maybe you will ask, why and how can I do this? Well, of course, you can do this using the bookmark I just shared with you. So here we're trying to go back to check this every time in the notebook. So it helps us repeat, and also it's a kind of a retention practices. Retention means we are trying to bring that to our mind every time we need to understand that word. Okay. Also, bookmark assist deliberate vocabulary learning. Well, that is the point of learning new vocabulary. We want to make it deliberate every time we learn about the vocabulary. It makes it more sense to us. Also, we actually practice regular look up new words in dictionary. So you try to look at this word in a bookmark, but also at the same time, you try to check that word in a dictionary. So here we have the practice that the regular practice we do, but also we go back and check the dictionary every time we check those bookmarks. Now, why bookmark strategy? You know, I made this rational question because I want that to be more clear to everyone. First of all, A bookmark new word is beneficial to remember. Now, I want to tell you this. Remember, if you have a bookmark, like it's a physical one, all right? I'm talking about the physical one that you go and check. Like every time you go back, you have it in your library. So it helps us to remember those words more effectively. Number two, it will evoke your memory to use new words in speaking and writing. So here, with that kind of practice, of course, I'm gonna be doing well in speaking and writing, okay? The last one, or the last answer to this rationale, to keep your vocabulary learning update, okay? So that's the point. Vocabulary learning, it's a non-ending task. This is what he's a famous researcher. He said that vocabulary learning is a non-ending task. That means we learn vocabulary every day. It's a non-ending process. So I hope that is clear with the number 4 strategy. All right, this is an example of how to do a bookmark, okay? I'm just trying to share with you one of those strategies. So you can do this at home, all right? You can do it, next to your office. You want to divide those vocabulary according to the subject, okay? Like math, science, English, IT, or music, whatever subject, okay? And then you try to label them with, for every day, or it depends on the importance that you want to highlight over here. You can have the different words every day. So this is just a kind of practice that you can do. Now, let me ask you, how many of you use bookmark strategy, or at least a notebook, vocabulary notebook?
No, I don't do it.
Okay. Anybody from the chat over here? Have you used this before? The notebook vocabulary for your vocabulary, like you have a physical notebook that you write all the new words in that notebook. Have you done that before? Okay. Now, I want to ask you to consider this. Why? Because when we are using the notebook, we're trying to practice learning vocabulary every day. We try to make it a habit. We are trying to have this because we are trying to train our mind to remember this new vocabulary each time. So we have to have that physical notebook. All right. I used to have this long time ago, but also I'm using it. Sometimes I use some notes just to check with those new vocabulary, but also it's a good practice. All right. Do you have any question about the 4th process? All right, I'm gonna move on. Now, we move on to the 4th process, which is remembering strategies for writing. Now, how can we do that? Of course, sometimes I know that some people, they practice writing. Yeah, you can do that in your phone, Mr. Allen. Yes, that's one of the benefits of technology is we keep track of those vocabulary learning. Whatever feels, whatever you feel comfortable with. It's not a physical one, but also you can use your phone, your tablet, and every kind of, device that you feel comfortable looking at frequently. Now, with the last process here, we try to train our mind to remember the spelling, okay? But also we're trying to look at how we use this word when it comes to writing, okay? So one of the practices that I usually share with my students to spell the syllables first, like this one, institution. Okay, so now once I did this, maybe it will be easier for me to remember the spelling, isn't it? So how many of you have done this before? So for example, when we are trying to use this, only when we have a long word, like this one, with different, like more than 3 syllables. So you're trying to do this with words that has more than 3 syllables. That's, one of the practice here that we are trying to use. Also, you can use it in your writing. I'm gonna explain this. Okay, that's very good. Now, when we ask to use this in your writing, it means you practice it over and over, just to help yourself practice writing those and make it just one of the outputs for your language learning. Now, the third one, picture your word. This is actually related to something very interesting here. Why? I'm going to show you something. This is a study done by Laurie Glarzer and his team, found that our brain can add new words to its visual dictionary. They said that this visual dictionary is actually located behind the left ear. And this actually a new study, it actually published from Georgetown University. And they actually found that this visual dictionary can picture the word, okay? Even if they are made up and have no meaning attached to them, sorry, in the visual word form area. That's the name of the visual dictionary. It's called the visual word form area. So here, everyone has that visual dictionary. It's actually behind the left ear. It can depict the picture of that word and then memorize it as a spelling practices. Did you get that idea? All right. Andrea says that I write them in a sentence and highlight the new words. This may be similar. Well, yes, that's a kind of practice, okay? Because you're trying to train writing practices, isn't it? Yes, okay. So I'm gonna share with you other practices, but feel free to share your own practice. Like, I want you to tell me, how do you practice writing new vocabulary? Or how do you practice, understanding the spelling, for example? So I want you to practice this or, share it with us. Now, how can you develop remembering strategies for writing? Okay, first of all, writing the new word to help them remember its orthographic spelling. So every time we practice this, we're trying to know the orthographic spelling of that word. Sometimes we look at the different word families, okay? Like, for example, we know the word book, and also we link that word to other word families like booked, booking, books, rebook, okay? Those are word families that will help us understand how we actually write that word in a different word family. Also, seeing how people use them in different genres. Like, for example, we might see that word used in economy, right? But also there are some other usage of that word in art, for example, or in computer science. So here, we're trying to train ourselves on how to use that word in different genres. Also, looking for new words while reading is another practice. Like, for example, maybe I come across this a new article, and then I see that word, somebody used it in that article. I totally try to understand, okay, that is one way to use that word, which is very interesting, isn't it? Another practice is participating and practicing in online discussion to develop writing skills. Like I said before, we need to engage in that language process or language output, like how people use them in writing. So I need to practice that. We could share those posts online, like respond to those discussions, read the blogs, and practice, participate with them. Yes, very interesting. Also, maybe you want to do some kind of publishing daily or weekly journals to update or upgrade your writing styles. Now, how can you do that? How can you do this daily or weekly journals? Of course, since you are trying to learn a new language, I suggest you have that kind of daily journal or weekly journal. You write whatever you feel comfortable about, okay? You practice that. And maybe you want to expand your writing. Go beyond that. See how it goes with your writing skills. Like, for example, I want you to engage with writing skills in different perspectives, okay? Along with the area of specialization. Like, for example, if you are interested in computer science, go and check those, for example, topics that you are very interested in and write about them. Just write a weekly journal. Don't worry about the grammar, okay? Just start to write a weekly journal. Maybe you want to write something about history or art. You will practice this yourself, okay? Now, you may want to ask, can I write that using my computer or tablet? Yes, you can do that, but the point is, you want to practice your handwriting, okay? Your handwriting has to develop, okay? Of course, and most of us, start learning how to write letters and then words, and then we move on to different process of writing. But this is your good, for example, chance to practice handwriting. So make it like a weekly practice. You do this every week. Write about, just like I said before, write about any topic. All right? Okay. So this is the last process here. I want to share with you some examples of those samples of the vocabulary notebook. As you can see here, this is the sample model, okay? Actually, I've designed this myself, okay? I designed it for my students or everyone who could learn the new words. And you can see here, you can practice writing anything related to synonyms at the beginning. Okay, so the first of all here, like somebody is trying to learn about the word sprawl, they can write synonyms here. And they're the process number one. Okay, number two, they can connect that meaning with the context that they just saw that word. For example, they saw that this word used in, for example, in a reading text. Now we try to get the meaning that is specifically about that context. All right. Then what about the pronunciation process? Well, you can spell or write the syllable of that word, you know, as you feel more comfortable. You see this one? You see this one here? Also, under number 4, you can draw something, remind you about this word. Okay, so every time we learn about this word, we try to get that word connected to what we are learning right now. So here I'm going to share with you about this later on, because it's actually one of those process for the notebook. So those are just samples I just want to share with you. All right, I'm glad you like this, because here we're trying to practice each one of those steps according to every word we learn. All right, this is the conclusion now about my 5 strategies. You can have a copy of this if you want. I'm going to send it over with the other kind of, you know, for example, materials. And you can see here under each one of those steps, I put some sub-strategies that you can actually use and practice for that, you know, strategy that you want to use. Like, for example, you want to ask about how do you process this? How can you do this? Well, very simple. I'm just trying to give you an idea. Let's say that you come across a new word. The first thing you need to do is to look for the synonym. Okay. Now, how can you do that? There are so many ways to do this. Okay. I practice all of them here, so you can see this and look at them as you go. Well, I hope they like it, and they actually, the point here, I want them to make it as a habit to practice it, Miss Andrea, so they can practice it themselves. Number 2, meaning with context. As you can see here, there are so many ways to help students get the meaning with that context specifically. Also, I'm going to share with you some samples for worksheet that will help all of you, you know, teachers and students, maintain those kind of strategies for your learning. All right. Is there any question so far?
Everything's good. Thanks.
Okay. All right. I still have some other slides. Like, for example, this is a reflection task. I want you to spend some minutes. I want you to ask yourself a question. There are 2 key points here. Why are they important? For example, why are those strategies important for you? That's number 1. Number 2, how will they impact on your role as a student or teacher in the future? So please take some minutes, and then you can reflect on those questions right now or later as you feel more comfortable. But just take your time to respond to this or those questions. So maybe I want to hear from anyone here about the first reflection task. Why are they important to you?
Okay, they are important to me because we have so many rules and processes for learning grammars, but with the vocabulary, I didn't hear processes like these ones. So this is new for me. Some of these strategies I have done them, but not in a conscious way, right?
Yes, yes.
But not the process step by step. So that's for me. That's why I'm shocked and interested with this. And the second one, how will they impact? Okay, maybe our students can understand the words truly, yeah, deeply, and retain them for a long term.
Exactly.
Yeah, and don't forget them too easy. And I don't know. That is it to me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good answer, Mr. Allen, because the point here is that I want you to practice it, make it a habit and strategy, because most studies showed that successful language learners, they found that most of them, they use strategies to learn new vocabulary. And that's actually come from hundreds of research, not just one, but most of them, they said the most successful students, the most advanced and excellent students, they use strategies on their learning, not just for vocabulary, but for every step of the learning they do. So here, I want you to make this strategy as a habit, but also the sequence I'm trying to show you here, because we go from big picture process to more detailed one. It's not just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it's like you try to make it a habit, practice it. Okay, I understand this word. Okay, I go check the meaning. The synonym. I see other words and then try to get the context of that word. What does it mean in that context? Because most second language learners, they stick with the first meaning usually. For example, they know that word has this meaning and they stop there. And that is actually a big issue here. As I said, there are so many contexts. So you're not trying to look at just only meaning, but try to look at that context. Exactly. Thank you, Aaron, for those answers to the reflection task. Anybody else would like to share?
Hi, Dr. Adel.
Yes, hi.
I just want to say that this is very, very useful. For example, sometimes as English teachers, when we are teaching the class, there are so many readings. And sometimes it happens when we're teaching, it's like, oh my God, there is a reading and there is a lot of vocabulary that is like very difficult vocabulary. And sometimes we say, I'm going to skip the reading because the students won't understand the vocabulary of the reading. So I'm going to continue with the grammar. And sometimes it happens. It's like very, very often. And we are like missing the opportunity of reading. But now with these strategies, I guess the teachers, we can improve our techniques of teaching reading with this vocab strategy. I think it's like very, very useful. As you said, we have to make it as a habit. I remember when I was working with you that we were applying the strategies. It was really amazing to see how the group that used the vocab strategies improved their English. You know, in not only the vocabulary, but their level of English in general, their proficiency was way higher than the other group that did not use the vocab strategy. So this is like very successful and it's very easy to use. It's like only just take out a sheet of paper from your notebook and start making the chart and look for the words in the dictionary and the meaning, the pronunciation, and it's very successful. It's very successful. Thank you so much.
I've done some reading courses for a couple of years, and one thing I practice every time, you know, I know this is a very hard task for teacher and students. Sometimes they see this, a lot of reading here, a lot of vocabulary, but the point here, the process that you want to do with them, first of all, give them 5 minutes to preview the vocabulary quickly. Sometimes you want to ask them to highlight those new words quickly, skim and scan at the beginning. So once they skim and scan those vocabulary, then give them a chance to ask you, what does it mean? How can I pronounce it? Or what does that word mean in that context? Did you understand what I mean here? So we call it preview the vocabulary.
Yes.
Yeah, but this is just only for reading classes, because I know some of those of you, you know, you're listening to podcasts. You have engaged with somebody in a discussion, or maybe you've read something in a blog post. Well, whatever it is, just try to get that strategy. So here you can apply it in different contexts, not just for reading classes, but so many practices. So I really looked at this carefully. And just to let you know, because I came from the same background, like I've learned English as a foreign language, but also I know that kind of, for example, obstacles for second language learners most of the time, they actually grapple with this kind of vocabulary size. What does it mean? They have some issues in comprehension, in writing, in speaking, in other skills like thinking about the critical thinking ability to use that language. I'm not saying their language, their mind ability, no. I'm trying to access the critical thinking. Okay, the process is, how can I get involved with this discussion? Number one, I need more vocabulary to practice those kind of discussion, for example. So here we are dealing with the strategies as a task, a non-ending task. So we do it every time we learn about those new vocabulary. I see that Andrea says something very interesting here. This is the reality, Miss Andrea, okay? I'm really happy to see this kind of response. Why? Most of the students, well, they think they can just understand this new vocabulary from the first glance. Like, for example, they just want to know the meaning and then go from there. However, when it comes to the usage of that language, that vocabulary, you will ask yourself, oh, maybe I don't remember exactly what does it mean. Here we go. That's the problem. The process that we're trying to do will actually continue for every second language learners. Learning ability. So I hope that is something we make it a habit or practice it, you know, from time to time. All right, let's see. I think I have other slides coming here. You can see this is a word cloud. It's actually done by statistics. When I finished, Miss Sophia and everyone here, you remember I've done my, I just want to share with you this very interesting study, very interesting. When I completed my PhD data, and then I came up with this analysis. It's a word cloud. What comes, you know, to my mind here, and it just came very interesting that the word vocabulary become the biggest, you know, picture in that study. So what you see here is not just random words. They are actually based on the study that I've done. So the higher or the bigger word, the most important word that you see in this kind of discussion. Did you see the idea here?
Yes.
All right. I have some publications that I would like to share with you. This is an episode, one of the books, ebooks I published on Amazon, and also this one. The first one is a book with the strategies straight. Like I discussed all of those strategies straight, so you can have it, and you know, it's a very good reading practice, and also reading about those tips that I shared with you, but in more details. You're gonna see a lot of details about this. Also, this is a workshop. It's a worksheet to help you practice the vocabulary learning strategies. I'm gonna show you something else later about this worksheet. All right, and these are my references. You can get to that link here, which is the survey link. Okay, so I just want to share with you the slides about the samples I was trying to show you here. All right, can you see the picture here? The PDF file. Can you all see that?
No, we're still seeing the PowerPoint.
Okay, I'm gonna do it again just to make sure I'm sharing the same page, which is this one. All right, how about now?
Yes.
Yes, it is now.
Okay. All right, so here, this is a sample of the worksheet that I have created. Basically, what you will see here, it's a kind of, you know, a sample of format that I designed for second language learners, or also for teachers to use with their students. So here, let's say you come across a new word, you're gonna write that word here, and then you write the other synonyms with that word in this box, okay? Of course, you're gonna write your name, the class or section, the new word here. You can write that word over here, and the date if you wanna make that more specific. Then with the number 2, you're gonna write that meaning specifically on that context, the word, you know, that you come across for that word. Number 3, the pronunciation practice process. Of course, you're gonna do that by writing the syllable, or maybe a hint for you to practice the pronunciation practice. All right, that's number 3. Number 4 is actually use the 5 VBS bookmark, which is actually you're gonna write everything, remind you of that word. So you can write or draw some picture on that kind of process. And number 5 here, you can write some sentences over here. Okay, you can write some sentences that remind you of that word exactly as you go with the process. Now, remember I told you about the journal, the weekly journal you write about that word. I made this blank over here, or this box, so you can write a descriptive kind of note about that word. A very simple detail. You know, you can just put that in a paragraph, maybe. Okay. And here is the model I showed you earlier. You remember this model? This model will help you also practice those processes as you go from 1 to 5. So this actually related to vocabulary knowledge. It's the center, and then start with number 1, number 2. But if you can see here, number 1 actually is become different than the one I showed you before. Start with meaning, guessing meaning with its context. That's number 1. Because later on, when I've done the measured data, it's a bigger data. It shows that guessing meaning with context is number 1 process. And then building synonyms network becomes number 2. But these 2 processes are very, very important. Okay? So to help you understand how to practice this for yourself. All right. So by now, I think I've done. This is all I have for today. If you have any question, please, feel free to post your question, or, you can just pick up the mic.
Natalia just wrote in the chat. How many worksheets like this one do you recommend us to use in a class?
Well, for example, you can just hand those to the students electronically, okay? And then maybe they can copy it, or they just make this process as they go with their notebook. So the notebook, they can design it themselves, or they can use it as a sample, okay? But you can use each one of those is actually used for one word, okay? So you can use it for a word, and then you move to the other one for other words, or maybe you combine those. Like if you have a notebook, you can put all of them together. But definitely you need like one worksheet for each word or each new word. I hope that is clear, Ms. Natalia. Well, how many words in class? It depends, maybe 5, 10 words. I think that is more than enough. But here we're trying to look at the practice itself. We want them to practice this themselves, so they can practice it every time. But maybe, you can go from 5, start with 5 words, and then gets bigger if they know the process. That's a good question. So you can just, we can have a free discussion about this. If you feel like wants to talk about other strategies that you have, or you are using other strategies, please feel free to do the, share your discussion. And also here, this is my blog page. Maybe you want to look at this if you are interested in looking at some of those articles, just to publish and read about my other writing. Yes, Natalia, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi. Hi. Thank you. I find this activity, well, not this activity, this strategy is very useful. And as the other teacher said, you were asking us about the strategies that we use. Actually, when I start a vocabulary class, I always start with sentences in order to give my students context. But in order to make this activity like more communicative, if I want them to practice speaking, I always ask them to work in pairs, read the sentences aloud, and explain with their own ideas what the words mean. I mean, before giving them the meaning, before my explanation, I always ask them to infer the meaning of the word based on the sentences that I gave them. And at the same time, they are speaking, they are practicing speaking because they are explaining the words with their own ideas.
That's very interesting activities. Actually, you're trying to look at the students' learning objectives, like what they're trying to do with those words. Just like you said, those exercises that you do related to speaking practices. I think this is very interesting, Ms. Natalia. But those practices, those strategies that I shared with you today, it's like you're trying to give them the tool, okay, to learn by themselves in any context, in any kind of, reading practices, writing practices, or just on their own. They can do this process, okay? Because using those strategies will actually make your job easier. And also thinking about the positivity of that strategies, they will practice learning vocabulary in a very practical way. I hope you get this idea, because the authentic learning behind this is that we are trying to show them how to use the strategies themselves, okay? So this is number one point that I would like to share with my students. So everyone or each one of us, they have, or we have these strategies. We're not talking about personalities, okay? We're talking about the learning styles, okay? Each one of us have these learning styles that, go with us during our learning journey. Miss Yolanda says, what do you think about using pictures to introduce vocabulary? Well, I showed you this article. You remember, Miss Yolanda, the article by, it's actually published by a group of team from Georgetown University. They found that human brain, we have this visual dictionary behind the left ear. This visual dictionary tried to practice using, picture the word as an image. But this is also very good practice. Yes, not in my blog, but I will share the reference. Give me a second. I'm gonna share the reference right now. Okay. All right, where is that PowerPoint? It's over here. I'm gonna share it with you. Just give me a moment over here. All right. This is the article itself. It's actually, all right, this is a PDF. I'm gonna copy it and share it with all of you right now. All right, trying to use other way because the PowerPoint is actually freezed a little bit. I was trying to copy over using this Zoom meeting, which is not allowed, but let's see this. Where is our meeting? It's here. Okay. All right, I sent you the article over here. Did you see that in the chat? All right, interesting. Okay, so do you have any question, discussion, or any talk you want to share as of now? Yes, yes, thank you, Miss Andrea. Believe me, once those students know about those strategies, ask them, what is your learning styles? And then they don't have to answer your question. I mean, they have to discover it themselves, okay? Because those learning styles depends on those learner themselves. However, using those 5 strategies will actually help them compose different thinking abilities, like reading, listening, speaking, writing. Also practice using those notebooks in their own library. So this is something you want them to discover, okay? But also you want to show it to them at the beginning. You know, every one of us have this kind of, you know, learning styles that we need to discover to continue, you know, get a very successful learning outcomes.
Perfect. If there are no other comments or any other doubts, I think that we can finish this session, Dr. Adel. We're very glad to have you today. You had very interesting features that we can implement in the classes and for students and for ourselves. And also, I would like to invite all the participants to fill in the form that we are sharing now in the chat. so as you can get the certificate of participation in all these bootcamp 2022. And also, we would like to thank Dr. Adel for this interesting session and the last session that you and the conference of yesterday. And also to invite you to the next session that is going to be in the conference that I am sending you through the chat also, that Dr. Alma Delia is going to speak about the brain of the teenagers and the context post this pandemic. So thank you again, Dr. Adel, and see you in a couple of hours in the conference.
All right, thank you so much. All right.